Welcome to the Thrive in Design podcast, the show for interior product brands ready to turn insight into action. I'm your host, Nicole Lashae Hall, founder of Thrive in Design. Each week, we explore how manufacturers, marketers, and sales leaders can align strategy, storytelling, and systems to drive real specification growth. This podcast is about moving beyond scattered marketing, outdated sales tactics, and visibility for visibility's sake, and into clarity, alignment, and momentum. Whether you're navigating change, scaling thoughtfully, or rethinking how your brand shows up in the design industry, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome back for another insightful episode of the Thrive in Design podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Lashae Hall, and I'm so excited to have you back here today. We have had some amazing guests this season, from Cheryl Durst to Susan Fernandez to Amanda Schneider. And I hope you guys have enjoyed all of the wonderful conversations and the information that these women have been sharing with us. We had everything from futurism in the design industry to really go-to-market strategy when it comes to interior product companies and what's important for 2026. And then we had Amanda Schneider here from ThinkLab to really talk about the research behind things. If you know me, maybe you don't know me, you just listen to this podcast, you know that everything that we do at Thrive in Design is based on research. Whether it's, looking at research from ThinkLab or, really doing secondary and primary research for our clients to really understand the market, what's happening, what designers want, and what designers want to see from specific product companies that we're working with in order to make a strategy that is working, in order to make a go-to-market strategy for all of the touch points. And I say that because sometimes brands come to me and they maybe hear the podcast or they see content online and that really resonates with them. And they'll come to me and say, "Hey, Nicole, can you guys just refresh our website? Or can you refresh our branding?" And yes, we can do that at Thrive in Design. We have a ton of resources and services to make your brand look good and really just tell a good brand story. But if you don't have the research to back up the decisions that you're making in your business, even down to the logo design, even down to the colors and beautifying your brand, then it's not worth the investment. So that's why we're here today, to talk more about research. Again, if you have not listened to episode 6 with Amanda Schneider from ThinkLab, please go back and listen and then come back to this episode 8 of season 9. Because today I actually want to look at the ThinkLab report that they publish every single year. And I want to break it down from a strategist. At Thrive in Design, I am the principal A&D sales strategist. What does that mean exactly? For me, I have been working in this industry pretty much my whole life. Pretty much my whole life. People look at me, if you're watching the video, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she must be straight out of college." And I'm blessed to have a very young face, but I have been working in this industry for over 17 years now across interior design, product sales, business development, and it has given me a very unique vantage point on how market shifts create winners and how market shifts create losers among product brands. And I hate those two words, but pretty much that's what it is. And in my company at Thrive in Design, yes, we are more than just a podcast where we are sharing helpful information for brands to be successful in this industry, but we are also a service-based businesses. We are strategy first and then execution second. And as the principal A&D strategist with this experience in design and product sales and business development, I really work with our clients to create an understanding of where they are now. So I audit what their business is doing. I talk with their leadership about what goals they have and where they want to be positioned in specific segments in the design industry. And then I also work with them to create a go-to-market strategy. I find that a lot of brands will come to me and they have a really great product, or maybe they stumbled into being a product-based business in our industry. Could have been a good designer, or they just had a really good team and they wanted to bring something to market. But there are so many different complexities of each different segment, right? If you want to go to market in hospitality, that's different to go to market in the workplace sector, and it's different in senior living, et cetera, et cetera. So with my expertise and the amazing expertise of my team, I am able to really strategize how a specific interior product brand is going to really go from where they are now to where they want to be in a specific design segment. And so with that understanding and my experience, I am the principal A&D strategist. So I want to look at the research at ThinkLab and look at it from a strategist point of view. So a lot of the times you'll see information online, or even you might be listening to this podcast and you're like, okay, what do I do next? If I have information, if I have the research, how do I take that and frame it and apply it to my business? Now, because I'm not using a specific case study in this episode, I'm just going to talk about it in general. And if you want to talk about it specific to your company, then let's hop on a call. The link to schedule a discovery call is always in the show notes, and it links directly to me. So we can have a call for about 30 minutes to talk about where your business is, what your goals are, and what the next steps might be, and how we could possibly work together. But for the sake of time and to keep this episode brief and actionable, let's look at the setting that we are in right now. If you know the industry is changing, but you're not interested in chasing trends, this is for you. The AI conversation in architecture and design has been dominated by hype and generic advice. That's exactly why we created the AI and Design Summit. It's a practical, strategy-driven event focused on how AI can actually support product development, marketing, sales, and thought leadership, aligned to real business goals, not tools for tools' sake. And once you understand where AI and strategy truly fit, Spec Ready helps you assess what your brand needs in place to apply that clarity and become easier to specify. Explore the summit at tidsummit.com and learn about Spec Ready at specready.co. So as you guys know, I love ThinkLab. I love Amanda Schneider. Shout out to her and the team that she has to do the amazing research that they do. And every year I look forward to them releasing their annual benchmark report. And they just released it for 2026 a couple of weeks ago. And so I'm excited to break it down today. And the core tension that they shared in this year's report is that, one, the workforce is shrinking. There's tons of pressure around tariffs. We have immense AI acceleration, but specification power is still growing. So let's talk about a couple of those things, especially when it relates to interior product companies. I was just talking with another consultant actually the other day, and we were just talking about how tariffs really impacted our industry last year. It was not just on the product side, but it was also in terms of like budgeting for how brands were spending their money when it came to marketing and advertising. So you might still be feeling that tariff pressure, especially when it comes to creating your go-to-market strategy and how you're going to be showing up in front of designers. I'm sure that you are probably feeling, okay, where do we spend our money to get the best ROI when it comes to our brand storytelling and our marketing? The other thing there that I just said was AI acceleration. I don't know about you. And for me, I am AI obsessed, right? I'm always testing new platforms. I have AI agents on my team. We use AI within every platform that we work on at Thrive in Design. And AI is accelerating at the most rapid pace that I've ever seen any technology develop in my lifetime. And I grew up in the 90s, in the early 2000s. So I'm somebody who had a cassette player and a CD player and an MP3 player and now streaming services. And so I've seen like this rapid change, or really just change in general, of technology over my lifetime. But never have I ever seen technology change in such an accelerated way. So if you're feeling that tension, you're probably like, oh my gosh, I cannot keep up. Or, oh my gosh, where do we start? Or, oh my gosh, this feels super intimidating. How do we stay relevant in this industry and show up where designers are looking? A lot of times before, brands might be thinking like, oh, should we go on TikTok? Or, oh, should we be on Pinterest? Or where are our designers finding us? And a lot of times right now, they're looking to these LLMs. So with all of these tensions, I want you guys to take a deep breath and be at ease because one, these are actually my favorite things to talk about, my favorite things to strategize about, and the core of our content at Thrive in Design that we are also sharing. And the good news is that the research that ThinkLab shared is that specification power is growing. One of the key things that they shared in their report is that the total U.S. market for commercial and residential products right now is $369.2 billion. And that residential furniture leads at $128 billion, but it's declining, which is post-pandemic, of course. You know, we all know that people were at home trying to beautify their homes since they were spending a lot of time there. And now that industry is declining right now. But most other segments are steady and growing. Now, at the time of this recording, it might have changed, right? It might have changed as this report has come out. Because if you have seen recent headlines, there's a lot of things happening in the world. But this is just based on the research that they actually shared. But with all of the change, my take on this is that the macro story is growth is happening. No matter if we have workforce shrinking, tariff pressure, AI acceleration, there's still an opportunity for your brand to succeed. But the micro story is disruption. We have seen disruption with the pandemic, disruption with our workforce shrinking, disruption because the tariffs are putting so much pressure on how we spend every single dollar within our business. And now we're seeing disruption with AI and how it's accelerating faster. And it's going to disrupt you no matter what, if you adopt it or not. The important thing to note is that the brands that win aren't the biggest. They're the ones most aligned with how specifiers actually work. And this is a core thing of what we talk about at Thrive in Design. If you've listened to past episodes and you've heard me talk about Ace the Journey is essentially really being in tune with your customers and always journey mapping what their experiences are, or journey mapping their experience to get to your product, so that no matter the disruption, no matter if we're in a pandemic, workforce shrinking, tariff pressure, AI acceleration, you're always in tune with how your specifiers are actually working so that you can be ready to pivot and be ready to strategize. Okay. The second thing that I want to call out when it comes to the data that is out there right now is specification power gaps and workforce shifts. So a couple of the things that ThinkLab shared, and I want to shout out them for all this wonderful research, is that the average designer has 40 times specification power of a consumer, and a top 200 firm has 140 times power. There are over 87,000 designers in the U.S., over 123 architects in the U.S. And even with that, the employment is down, right? Year over year, we're down 6% in terms of designers in our country. We're down 3% in terms of architects. And firm employment dropped 10%. 82% of design firms have 4 or fewer employees, and business comes from many small firms, especially when it comes to residential. Now, the most important thing that I want to point out here is that the median designer age dropped from 45 to 42, and now Gen Z is entering the workforce profession. And they have different expectations for digital, speed, and brand engagement. And of course, in episode 6 with Amanda Schneider, she breaks down all of this information and why it's important. But I want to take a moment to break down like what you should do with that information, right? Because you're probably thinking like, okay, yes, they have amazing specification power, 40 times than an average consumer. But what does that mean for me? And when I say me, I mean you as an interior product company leader. Well, one, designers are doing more with less, right? So less meaning they have less people on their team. So they're doing more with less means they're consolidating their go-to brands. So you have to be thinking about if you're not in their top 3 to 5 brands, you are getting cut from consideration. And I talk about this on other episodes as well, how you can really make sure that you're staying top of mind or getting into that top 3 to 5 companies that these designers are considering on a regular basis. Now, if you just want some quick actionable tips, I'm going to give you what we do at Thrive in Design. So at Thrive in Design, as I said before, we are strategy first and execution second. But when brands come to us, we like to take them through what we call position to specify. And essentially, it's exactly what it is, right? We want to position your brand in order for designers to specify you over and over again. And especially for you to be in that top 3 to 5 companies that they are going to for their needs when they are working with less. So what does position to specify look like in action? The first thing is to audit where you stand in the specifiers mental shortlist. So you have to be ready to be vulnerable in that moment and to hear the truth or to know the truth about where you stand. Because if you don't know where you stand, then how will you build your strategy for what's next? So that's the first step. Audit where you stand in the specifiers mental shortlist. And some of that is going to take research. It's going to take primary research. It's going to take secondary research in order to gain that understanding. And then from there, you're able to build the touch points to move up. A part of auditing, too, is to look at, for a designer, if they have a shortlist, or if it's mental, if it's a physical shortlist, or what have you, what are those other brands doing that are on their shortlist that have allowed them to be memorable? And then you can, from there, move to building out the touch points to move up on their list. Now, of course, we can talk about that for about 45 minutes, probably longer, probably 45 hours. But a practical tip that you can do is just ask your reps, do designers name us when listing their go-to brands? If not, that is your starting point. Another thing to think about here is that with Gen Z entering the workplace, digital first expectations are there. I talked with a brand a few weeks ago, actually, and they were like, what should we do? We really want to have some quick wins. We want some introductions to designers, and we want to get specified. And I was telling them how important it is to also focus on their digital experience. And at first they were pushing back, why do we need to do that? I said, well, because one, we have a ton of different generations in the workplace right now. And with Gen Z entering and with Gen Z, being top specifiers at firms, they expect a digital first experience. They don't necessarily want the introductions of the traditional sales as their first touch point. So they want digital first expectations. They want faster response times. They expect you to have a social media presence, and that matters more than ever. So if you're thinking about all of the different touch points that you need to be aware of for your go-to-market strategy, you also need to be thinking about which generations are actually specifying us and who has that buying power. So when you work with Thrive in Design and you're walking through that position to specify framework, we're going to work with you to audit your manufacturer visibility with the A&D community. We're going to align your brand storytelling with specifier discovery and evaluation behavior. Then we're also going to develop a specification growth strategy targeting the right firms, cities, and channels with all the touch points that are needed to be successful. Okay, now let's talk about tariffs, right? Everybody's feeling tariffs, especially in our industry, especially if you are not a U.S.-made manufacturer. Honestly, there are not a lot of U.S. manufacturers in our industry. I've worked for a few that are here. I've also worked for companies that have a home base, maybe a showroom in the United States, but they're manufacturing in Europe or in Asia or even Latin America. But what do we want to know about tariffs and how it's going to impact brand strength specifically, right? So we can talk about tariffs all day long and how they're impacting your pricing. ThinkLab's research called out that 25% tariff on upholstered furniture, kitchen cabinets, and vanities since October 2025, and higher rates are delayed until 2027, but 25% is already impacting pricing. When it comes to consumer price index, there's been a 4.6% increase in furniture prices year over year, and smaller manufacturers are raising their prices 15 to 18% to offset duties. Now, we can talk about how that impacts your pricing and then your specifications, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that, especially with tariffs, if a designer specified your product before these tariffs hit, and then the tariffs increase the pricing so that now that they have to sub you out, that's a whole different conversation. But I believe, too, that tariffs can be thought about in a few different ways when it comes to like your brand storytelling. So the important thing here to take away is that tariffs are a brand communication opportunity, not just a supply chain problem. When it comes to supply chain, yes, you have to adjust your pricing. Yes, you have to update your quotes and tell the designers how this is impacting their specification. If they need substitutes, then your sales team needs to be, boots on the ground to make sure the spec is not flipped. That's the supply chain part. But the brands that explain their value, sourcing story, and quality justification will earn designer trust. The ones that just raise their prices will lose specification share. So it might be inevitable that you have to raise your prices, but use this also as an opportunity to explain your value, your sourcing story, your quality in order to gain the trust of the designers that you're working with. As I mentioned before, my background has been in sales. I worked for different interior product manufacturers before ever starting my own business. And in working in sales and growing relationships with designers, I truly understand that designers understand price increases when they trust the brand, right? Price increases have been happening forever. If your company just increases your price list every single year, designers expect that. So use that as a way to just lean in, build trust. Because the issue isn't the increase, it's really silence or not really building a story in order to gain that trust. So in order to do that, my take as a strategist would be to proactively brief your rep teams and key A&D contacts. Hey, here's what's happening. Here's why. Here's what we are doing to protect value. Research from ThinkLab shows that 73% of residential designers use a markup model. So even with residential designers, they are already putting markups into their pricing. The price uncertainty directly threatens their client relationships. So why don't you help them help their clients? This is a moment for your differentiation. Most brands will go quiet, but the ones that communicate earn loyalty. And that's really been the theme of our conversation in the last few minutes. Communication through several different touch points and using that communication to build trust. So how does that tie into what we do at Thrive in Design? So if you're okay, we need help with this, let us help you develop that tariff communication playbooks for your sales team, create your brand narratives, positioning value and quality ahead of price sensitivity, and align messaging across your reps, website, and your digital channels. And the last thing I want to talk about today is AI. And how it's no longer optional. We've been talking about AI in a lot of different ways on this season of the podcast. And if you have not registered for the AI Design Summit that we are hosting on May 20th, head to tidsummit.com to get your tickets today. But when it comes to AI, no, it is not optional. You have to adopt it. With ThinkLab's research, what does that mean in terms of our industry? Their research showed that 37% of commercial designers' time goes to drawings, renderings, 20% to sourcing, which are both prime targets for AI. So even if you're thinking about you might be listening to this episode thinking, okay, how can I develop an AI platform that will service designers? Those are two primary areas right there. Designer AI adoption has tripled from 2023 to 2025, with 20% more planning to adopt soon. And even for me, I did a keynote at IFDA Philadelphia Chapter's trade show back in November 2025, and it was a room full of maybe 50 designers. When I first started the conversation, I polled the room and I said, how many of you use ChatGPT? And that's one of the common LLMs that pretty much everybody uses right now. But probably only 5 people raised their hand at the beginning of my presentation. And then during the presentation, I showed them how I created this custom GPT that was specifically geared towards how designers like specify. And we did a demo, and it like completely changed the game, specifically for one woman in the crowd who was a drapery designer. And for her draperies, she was designing things and like doing measurements and calculations that was taking her like hours to do. But with the custom GPT that I created and showed to the designers in the room, she was able to like cut her time from hours to minutes by using something specifically designed for her and her design experience. By the end of that presentation, I asked the crowd again, how many people would use ChatGPT now for their design process? And everybody raised their hand. And so even if I think about that example, more designers are planning to adopt AI soon, especially as we get more specific with use cases for AI for the design practice. And if you want the link to that custom GPT, send me an email, hello@NicoleLashae.com. I'll be happy to share it with you, and you can play around with it for how you might be using it as a designer, sales rep, manufacturer. But here's my take. Manufacturers typically think of AI as an operations tool, which of course it can be. But for specifiers, AI is changing how they find you, evaluate you, and present you to clients. So if your imagery and data aren't clean and accessible, AI tools won't surface your products and you become invisible. So when you want to be like AI ready, or I like to use our term here at Tariff Design, you want to be spec ready. Specifically when it comes to AI readiness starts with asset quality, not tool selection. So you might be thinking about your tools like, okay, as a team, how can we be more efficient? Maybe we're going to adopt Claude, ChatGPT, etc. But in this instance, I actually want you to make a shift to think about how you're going to assess the quality of your information. So first question, are your product images, specs, and data structured for AI tools? The second is create an audit checklist about your image quality and consistency. Does your spec sheet have machine readability? Do you have Vim Revit availability? And is your website searchable by these LLMs? And then for Gen Z designers, as they are entering the profession, they expect you to be AI enabled, to have digitally native brand experiences. So I want to encourage you to invest now or risk irrelevance with the next generation. So this is not a matter of prompting AI for you guys to be more effective and efficient. Yes, that's part of it. And we have another episode about that. But in terms of thinking about your A&D strategy, think about it in terms of, are we AI ready to have an LLM present us to a designer when they are searching for something specific? Now, how does that tie into what we do at Thrive Design? Allow us to help you with your AI readiness audits, whether that be imagery, data, and digital asset assessment. We can help you with your implementation guidance for scaling visual asset creation with AI, and also strategy for ensuring products surface in AI-powered design tools. Okay? So we talked about a lot today, and I want to pull it together for a final close. The recap. There are fewer specifiers, and each one actually matters more. They're telling you what they need, same as last year. And I want to ask you, are you actually listening? 2026 is your year of positioning. So if any of these things resonated with you, if you're a manufacturer and you don't know where to start, that's what we do at Thrive Design. We help brands get specified more by the right people in the right channels. So let's talk. Next time, we're going to be digging into more of these topics when it comes to marketing and brand strategy, being positioned to specify in all things sales, marketing, alignment. I look forward to seeing you or in the next episode and running down more of this information. But hopefully today was helpful. If today's episode sparked ideas, the next step is giving those ideas structure. Spec Ready is Thrive and Design's strategic framework designed to help interior product brands show up clearly, align marketing and sales, and become easier to specify without adding more noise or complexity. You can learn more at specready.co. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, be sure to follow the podcast and check out the show notes for links, resources, and ways to get in touch with our team. Thanks for listening to the Thrive and Design podcast. I'll see you next time.